The Dragonlance mini set from WizKids is not only a great set if you're running the adventure, but also it's just a solid set of starter minis if you're running most any adventure in a classic D&D setting like the Sword Coast. You get good PC minis, several dragons, common undead creatures, and really useful support minis like siege engines and warhorses. I don't know if any one mini is going to blow your mind, but I also don't think there's necessarily a bad pull from this set. First, many thanks to WizKids for sending us a factory set to review. A factory set is one of each mini in the set, so I can't show you the exact distribution of each brick or each case or each booster box, but as always, we'll go through each and every figure, and you can use the segmented timeline below me if you want to jump around. And we'll have all the links you might need right down below me here, so let's get to it. Introducing the main booster set for Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. Before we jump in, this video is brought to you by Drist's Travel Log of Everything, Volume 2, which just launched on DM's Guild. This is a collaboration from several top DM's Guild creators that greatly expands your options as a 5e player or DM. There are new ancestries like Gnoll, Dogfolk, and an awakened machine called the Robo. They introduce an Alchemist class and bring 26 new subclasses for the existing 5e classes, plus remasters of a few official subclasses that needed a little bit more polish and pizzazz. There are new spells, of course, and maybe most fun of all, new Dungeon Master tools. You get rules for cooking, for powerful mythic heroes, and maybe most exciting for me, expanded rules for mounts, so you can train them and bond with them for additional boons. Plus, put your new Warhorse mini to work. Drist's Travel Log of Everything Volume 2 has just launched and it's already a bestseller. You can pick it up as either a digital PDF or a beautiful hardcover book, or both, and you can also bundle it up with the best-selling Volume 1. Check them out at the links down below. That is Drist's Travel Log of Everything Volume 2. We are kicking things off with a Dragon Army Soldier. The Red Dragon Army is the antagonistic force in the adventure, so you're gonna get a lot of use out of this one. And there is a whole warband of Dragon Army Soldiers that we reviewed. You can find those links down below. This one is a little bit similar to one in that set, but they are unique sculpts, so you can add this one to your warband for 7 total Dragon Army Soldiers so far. And it's a common, so you may end up with several. The next couple of minis can be used as PCs in the Dragonlance setting, or in any setting really, starting with one of the humans. The first one here is a bard from the land of Tarsus, which went through a ton of changes after the Cataclysm. It used to be a seaside city along the verdant plains of southern Ansalon, but after the Cataclysm, coastline shifted and it found itself a landlocked city whose harbors now sit upon waves of sand. The city has adapted though, turning its industry to hunting, scavenging, and trading. Kender are a divinely created race of gnomes who have boundless curiosity and fearlessness. They're one of the staples of Dragonlance, so they should be familiar if you are a longtime fan of the setting. They're often connected to halflings, though they are gnomes. As a playable race, they can taunt foes and more easily shrug off fear effects. This mini is based off of the CR1/4 Kender Skirmisher stat block. The Thorbardin Dwarves, who live beneath the Carolus Mountains in southern Ansalon, divide themselves into ancient clans, including the Leedara clan, who lives on the surface. After the Cataclysm, the king of the Thorbardin Dwarves closed the gates of the kingdom to all surface dwellers, including the Leedara clan, which resulted in the Dwarf Gate War. Continuing on our PC mini set, we have a Mount Nevermind Gnome. Mount Nevermind being a dormant volcano on the island of Sandcrest. This particular volcano is filled to the brim with clever and potentially explosive devices that have been crafted by the endlessly inventive rock gnomes who call Nevermind home. It's not an exact match to the art, but I think this mini is good for Tatina Rugeldust, great name, a gnome inventor who's part of a fun quest in Chapter 4. Prior to the Cataclysm, the Elves of Qualinesti were a relatively new society that had spun off from the Sylvanesti because they wanted a more egalitarian and open society, more welcoming of outsiders. They had formed a bond with the dwarves of Thorbardin, but once the Cataclysm hit, they pulled back within their own borders and became withdrawn once again. There are two groups of sea elves in this part of the Dragonlance setting, the Deep Elves, also known as the Dargonesti, and the Shoal Elves, or the Dormanesti, who live closer to the land. They're quite rare in the setting, but you can use the race rules in Monsters of the Multiverse to play a sea elf if you like. They can breathe underwater, have resistance to cold, have dark vision, and they can communicate with the fishes, though oddly the fishes can't communicate back to them. This mini represents Urshfern, the leader of a group of sea elves that the PCs will meet in Chapter 5. Our second human is from the ancient human nation of Urgoth, split in twain by the Cataclysm. The Northerners consider themselves inheritors of the Old Kingdom and live in peace with the nearby Kender and Goblin tribes. The Southerners are fewer in number and live along the coast among the more dangerous ogres and giants. Next up we have a skeleton. There's nothing particularly special about him, though I do like his little helmet. There are quite a few skeletons in this adventure, just a lot of undead in general really. Most notably a dragon skeleton, which would have been a cool mini if you ask me. There is a particular skeleton in area R3 of the raided catacombs in Chapter 4 holding a berserker axe, a rare magical weapon that your PCs can claim. This mini would be good for that encounter. Next up is a nefarious-looking black-robed mage of high sorcery, miming how to hold a bowling ball. No, in the art, she is conjuring some sort of scary-looking orb, and I'm rather sad that the orb didn't make it onto the mini. There are three orders of mages of high sorcery. The black-robed follow the evil god Nutari, the Black Moon of Kryn. They're primarily concerned with furthering their own agendas. The PCs can join one of the three orders and earn their own robe later in the adventure. Our final human is from the Abanasinia region. You can tell there's a lot of deeper lore from the previous editions that's just teased in this book. That's why I'd love to see separate full-length lore and adventure books for releases like this. I still don't get why D&D content is so limited. The lore always seems to get the short shrift. But anyway, Abanasinia is a peaceful region that's being taken over by the fanatical and theocratic seekers who condemn the use of magic. Another generic undead mini here with the Wight. I was wondering if these sculpts were just left over from the Boneyard set, but this is low-key a pretty heavy undead adventure, and Wights do show up in Chapter 4. In case you need a refresher, Wights are intelligent undead given unlife by Orcus or a similar powerful being in return for pledging to devote their existence to war on the living, and they do remember their former, usually quite evil lives. So, like Wights, Wraiths start out as loathsome humanoids who often pledge themselves to evil gods or devils, but they find that their dark souls are so suffused with negative energy that at the moment of death, those souls collapse in on themselves and cease to exist. The soulless, incorporeal spirit then lingers on with no memories of its former life. It only exists to extinguish life and eat tacos. As we move into our uncommon minis, let me remind you about all the great animated cards that you can pick up from our sponsor Hit Point Press. Of course, they have animated spell cards of all levels. They'll bring your caster spells to life while also streamlining your games as you'll have all your 5e spell information that you need at your fingertips. You can also get the deck of animated townsfolk to generate new and engaging NPCs for your player characters to chat with and or murder hobo. There's the animated deck of conditions to help you and your players track the dozens and dozens of conditions that'll be flying around the table at higher levels. And there are two in-game items that can add a lot of fun to your games. The animated deck of many things, if you like to just throw bombs into your adventures, and the deck of illusions, which is more subtle from a gameplay perspective, but just as gorgeous. You can pick up all these decks today and get a discount on sets of decks by visiting animatedspells.com or using our links in the doohickey down below. Leedara is our first uncommon mini in the set, and a pretty striking one. She is the ghost of a Qualinesti Elf. She makes an appearance quite early in the adventure and then serves as an important NPC later on. It's not terribly likely that she'll enter combat with the PCs, but having a mini on the table always raises the tension deliciously. And this just makes a great ghost mini in general for future adventures. This fantastic mustache mini with a human attached is a Knight of Solamnia, the most storied knighthood in the Dragonlance setting. The blue coloring makes this one fit right in with your Calaman Army warband figures. which is also reviewed down below me in the doohickey. It also suggests that this knight belongs to the Knight of the Sword, dedicated to honor and courage and the virtues of Kirijolith, the god of just war. Knight of Solamnia is a PC background in the adventure. I wasn't able to find the art for this particular knight anywhere, but apparently there is a long and storied history of the Knights of Solamnia sporting epic mustaches. Here we get another member of a Dragonlance warband. The difference here with the Draconian is that this exact mini is in the Draconian warband set, and actually that set includes 2 copies of it. It was really just a weird decision. So if you get that warband and then one of every mini in this set, you'll end up with 3 of the same Bozak Draconian. Yeah, I don't know. The Bozak Draconians are casters born from bronze dragon eggs. So this little blob is a clutch of purple worm eggs. That's fun. I don't think that there are any purple worm eggs in the Dragonlance adventure, but I may have missed them. There are some purple worm eggs in Out of the Abyss and Storm King's Thunder though, and they make for some fun story moments, I imagine. It does make me want to search out some Etsy options to use for regular dragon eggs though. We do have a purple worm mini, but no purple wormling mini, unfortunately, at least that I know of. Our second Mage of High Sorcery is sporting a white robe. Their magic is infused with the moon Solanari, and they pledge to make the world a better place. As a PC who wears the white robe, you'll learn a 2nd level abjuration or divination spell that you can use without using a spell slot if you like, once a day. You can also use your reaction and a spell slot to reduce the damage done to a nearby friend. This is Jeyev Uth Veldrews, who's introduced in Chapter 3. He's part of a band of mercenaries just outside the starting town of Vogler. Jeyev and his mercenary companions are really only present in this chapter, and as a GM you get to decide their fate and their motivations. And the adventure gives you a few options to choose from. If you so choose, you can have them continue in the story if things develop in that way. And of course, this can be also just a good PC mini. A Kender Vampire might seem like a rather random addition to the set, but this mini really represents a character in the adventure named Lori Wandwillow, who shows up in Chapter 7. She can impart some useful and some not so useful information, and can give them a pretty good fight if they insist or try to take her stuffs. Bakaris the Younger, and to a lesser extent the Elder, are very important NPCs in the adventure. You will definitely want a mini to represent him. This one, while bent, will do the job, but you could also just use a generic young-looking noble if you don't have this particular mini. Again, it's quite easy to fix these up when they're bent like this, but I try to show you the minis exactly as they arrive at my door so you know what you can expect. Though we do receive ours now all jumbled up in one box rather than in the protective plastic sleeves inside the booster boxes, so yours may arrive in better condition than ours do these days. The Skeletal Knight is actually a unique undead creature added in Dragonlance. Skeletal Knights arise to serve more powerful undead creatures like Death Knights. Unlike the Wights and the Wraiths earlier, Skeletal Knights weren't terribly wicked in life. They were usually virtuous, in fact. But at some point, they betrayed their oaths and are now supernaturally loyal to their new evil bosses. Oh, we do get a dragon egg, though this one is well protected in its own little cushioned box. A great mini to use for heists, I think. I still want to look for some standalone dragon eggs that are the right size for our minis. I'm sure there's a ton out there on the creator market. If you have any favorite little creators or stores on Etsy or anywhere else, please let me know in the comments down below. Like the Bozak Draconian earlier, this figure, the Baaz Draconian, has 2 identical minis in the Draconian warband. Why couldn't they at least adjust the pose? I just don't get it. But anyway, the Baaz Draconians are the foot soldiers of the Draconian race, born from the eggs of brass dragons. Another reason to have a variety of dragon egg minis, perhaps. They are the smallest Draconians, and despite their wings, they are unable to fly. Caradoc was a seneschal of Lord Soth, like a steward or a major domo, before the Cataclysm, and like many of Soth's retainers, he was consumed in the fires of the Cataclysm and cursed with undeath. He was one of those particularly evil folks who returned as a spirit, who now possesses the bodies of other humanoids in order to get around and interact with the world. This body is one of those possessed. He has a few forms in the adventure, but this is the only one that got a mini for some reason. You can use the Wraith mini for him when he is outside the body. Here we have the undead body of David Hasselhoff riding a black horse, perhaps named Kit. First though, What a gorgeous mini. There are no specific stat blocks for a mounted Skeletal Knight, but you can just use the rules for mounted combat. You can either make the horse a Warhorse or a Nightmare, perhaps, if you like. And you have the separate Skeletal Knight mini for when he descends from or is knocked off his steed. A Skeletal Knight features pretty heavily in Chapter 4. Well, this is a fun and surprising addition to your Dragon Army warband, and again, this is a specific character in the adventure, but they are not using her name on the base of the mini for some reason, which I think is a common issue with WizKids booster sets. I think it would be really handy to have the name of the NPC on the base, and in the various online stores where you might be looking for minis of characters from the adventures. This is Viewmaster Golcag, the leader of the raid on Vogler in Chapter 3. She's accompanied by two Baaz Draconians who just happen to be twins and who happen to always stand in the exact same pose as one another. Sure, she uses an adjusted Ogre stat block. Yes, oh my god, this is going to be very popular on the aftermarket. We do have a couple of riding horse minis now, but not so many war horses. There was one in the Summoned Creatures set box back in 2021, and we got a skeletal warhorse with the Boneyard set in case something terrible happens to your warhorse, but I'm happy to see this one included here. And it's an uncommon, so hopefully you'll get a couple of them if you pick up a case. And there is a warhorse stat block in the basic rules to use with it. If you're a fan of the chaotic Slaad like I am, you will be happy to hear that you get to have some fun Slaady shenanigans in Chapter 5 of the adventure. There's even an encounter with a Slaad Draconian hybrid creature, which sadly didn't get a mini or even any art in the adventure as far as I can tell, which is criminal. There isn't a stat block called Brood Slaad, but in Area D5 of the Sunward Fortress in Chapter 5, you will have a battle with a red Slaad covered in tadpoles, hence this mini. Here's one of those rare minis that you can use in both your D&D games and your Starfinder games. These ancient robots were originally created to help construct the glorious city of Istar. Their barbed, scythe-shaped arms were for carrying 2x4s and supplies home from the local Lowe's, and definitely not for shredding adventurers to pieces. It also spits out a gel that will electrify and then harden. Raven Uth Volger is the, quote, down-to-earth mayor of the starting town of Vogler and will remain an important NPC and ally of the characters throughout much of the adventure if things go remotely to plan. This is the kind of mini to keep on hand for random encounters too. I like having a bag of townsfolk and bar patrons and guards and bandits handy because you can use those in a lot of circumstances, especially in a lot of random encounters. And a mini like this is great for a person with some authority in a town or maybe even in a caravan. Instead of filling out our ranks with a red-robed Mage of High Sorcery, we get another black-robed member. If you're using them as villains, which they can be in this adventure, having a couple of black-robed mages is probably a good thing. This mini is based on Wyhan, a retired shop owner in Kalaman who shows up in the adventure. Again, WizKids, give us the actual names when you make minis for characters from the adventure. If nothing else, it makes my job looking up all this information easier. While it's not an exact match, you could also use this mini for a character named Loazette, who is a black-robed mage who works with the Red Dragon army later in the adventure. And now we're moving into our rare minis. Dalamar here, not to be confused with Dalinar Kholin, is a Qualinesti Elf that the PCs will likely meet in the Northern Wastes. He can help impart quite a bit of information to the PCs, and he'll spend some time with them during the chapter. It's rather up to you if you want to expand his story beyond what's in the book, but the adventure does give you seeds of a story for him if you do want to grow them. First of all, this is how you name an NPC mini. Give us the name so we can know who the figure represents in the story, and then give us an organization or a description like Knight of Solamnia if we want to use it more generically. I don't know why they can't do this more often, but anyway, I'm sorry, this is my soapbox for this particular set. Becklin will meet the adventurers at the end of Chapter 3, which is the first chapter of the real story of the adventure. She's essentially the overall quest giver for the Dragonlance adventure. Darrett Highwater is a young squire and an aspiring knight who serves Becklin. Darrett is probably the most important PC ally in the entire campaign and will be around for most of it, so it'd be good to have this mini handy. It's characters like this who really deserve to have the sidekick status so they can level up as they go through the story with the adventurers. He just uses the knight stat block unless you make some changes yourself. And of course, this would also be a great PC mini. Wersten Kern is another knight who followed Lord Soth into undeath. As she did in life, she flies Soth's Black Rose standard in battle, which can now inflict a nasty curse, and she follows his orders unquestioningly. She comes with a pretty beefy CR 14 stat block. She also has some limited spellcasting abilities. Captain Hask is an Auric Draconian, and actually a different sculpt than the one in the Draconian Warband set, thank God. I would have no compunction against using this figure as a gold Dragonborn either. Fight me on it. Hask is, of course, a captain in the Red Dragon army. You can tell he's a leader because he's pointing to where other people should do the fighting. Demolin is a powerful Qualinesti Elf mage of high sorcery who actually lived through the Cataclysm. The PCs will encounter her on their way to the City of Lost Names. She was one of the mages who enabled the city to first take flight to the skies only to see it destroyed because of hubris. She now protects its ruins. Demolin imparts a lot of background lore, as a lot of other characters do in this story, but her primary purpose is to conduct the test that will let the PCs who are interested in becoming true mages of high sorcery do so. All the test details are laid out in the chapter. This is an interesting choice for a rare slot. On the one hand, it's a great Marrow mini, one of the best really. On the other, Marrow are pretty common monsters, so having this as an uncommon would have been nice, and Marrow only show up in the adventure as a potential random encounter unless I missed something somewhere. But this really good looking mini kinda makes me want to have a full Marrow warband. Now we are getting into the fun territory. Yes, this could just be a regular catapult, but as the name Gnome Flinger implies, it's for more than just rocks. This gnome-constructed device is designed to, well, fling soldiers into the enemy ranks. It'll fling folks up to 300 feet, and they will take 1d6 damage for every 10 feet they travel. But it notes that a parachute, or as they call it, a nary crash, is available upon request, but only upon request. All the details of both of those devices are in the appendix of the Dragonlance adventure. Get a load of this beaut. Our other little siege engine here emits a 60-foot cone of fire that deals 5d10 damage on a failed save. Though you also have about a 5% chance of it just exploding in your face. These are two items that I might add to any campaign, especially one with a gnome or an inventor or some sort of other crafter. Let the PCs pilfer or otherwise find the plans for making devices like this, and then the crafter can go about constructing it in their downtime. It's a great way to reward your crafters and just introduce something fun into your adventures. I would love to see more items like this. This set has some really good dragon minis, starting with our lesser death dragon here, the dragon type introduced into 5e in the Dragonlance book. There's quite a few of them in the adventure as well. We got the adult version along with Lord Soth, who we reviewed last month, or maybe 2 months ago now? I don't know, what year is it? Death dragons arise from the remains of metallic or chromatic, or I assume any dragon really, that's become suffused with the fire of the cataclysm, or just the power of hate and vengeance if you want. What's most interesting about them is that the more powerful they become, the more their previous personalities begin to resurface, which could make for some very interesting stories, and some interesting tactics that your PCs may pursue. Here's a great and unique Treant mini. This is another named NPC in the adventure, Duskwalker. She used to be the master gardener for the Lost City, and now Duskwalker is just pissed and is lashing out. When Duskwalker attacks, you'll notice that the bodies of the Red Dragon army soldiers are just swinging from her branches. The PCs can talk Duskwalker down, and if you have a druid type in your party, it'll probably help, but otherwise you may be forced to fight her. This is our first really random mini in the set, as I don't believe a Behir shows up in the adventure. And we had a decent Behir mini back in the Dungeon of the Mad Mage set. But here we are, and it's a good looking mini. These monstrosities are actually intelligent. Not super intelligent, but they can communicate in Draconic. They were created by storm giants in their war against the dragons, and they still hold an instinctual hatred for the dragons. It is a little bit odd that they speak Draconic and not giant though. Without giving too much away, Belafeon here can take the form of a young blue dragon, of course here upscaled to a huge mini. He's got a cute little crown and some punky little anklets. I'm sorry, I can't take blue dragons seriously. They all just look super cute. Again though, WizKids, give this one the name Belafeon Young Blue Dragon, so that way we can find it later. It's a good dragon mini that may fly under the radar a little bit because it most likely won't come up in searches for Young Blue Dragon minis on the aftermarket. So you may be able to get this one a little bit cheaper than you might otherwise. This is just a great young green dragon mini. No special parts, no crowns, no cool anklets, no awesome sock club socks. I don't think it represents a named dragon in the adventure. It's just a great upscaled young green dragon mini, and I think we can all get behind that. This is what you hope for when you open up a booster box, and the reason you test the weight of all the individual booster boxes when you walk into a game store. The Uncalox here is, I think, a brand new creature for Shadow of the Dragon Queen. It is an undead, strangely cute creature made from the bones of bears and whatever else happened to be lying around at the time. They are predatory creatures who enjoy feasting on... Hold on, wait a second, let me check my notes. Yeah, the flesh of the living. The fun bit about them is that they can actually trap foes inside their exposed ribcage. Where the young green dragon was pretty standard, the black dragon here is armored up, which I dig. Raise that AC up a little bit there. I didn't notice a particular dragon in the adventure that this is referencing, but I don't think you'll have a hard time slotting it into whatever adventure you're running. Is it wearing armor of its own accord, or is it being dressed up by a more powerful master? Does the armor have an effect on the dragon? All things that you can explore in your stories. Our capstone mini in this set is this fellow with a bent lance. No, we have another modular mini for you. For the purposes of the stats on the left side of the screen here, I'm going to assume that this is a Dragon Army officer. That armor on the black dragon can also sport a saddle, allowing this unnamed but finely dressed individual to hitch a ride. Again, I don't think it's necessarily compatible with any of the other WizKids mountable minis, sadly, but you can always use a little bit of tack to make it fit if you really want to. It's Dragonlance. We definitely need as many dragon riders as we can possibly get. You can check out our reviews of all the other modular minis from Dragonlance in the video description down below. Those videos also show you how compatible they are with one another, and spoiler alert, they are not very much compatible. This is a great set of minis for your Dragonlance adventures, with the Behir, I think, being the only one not strictly mentioned in the adventure, though you can certainly slot him into a random encounter in the Northern Wastes. You also get most of the NPCs in the adventure, though there may be enough left over for at least one little Dragonlance NPC box if they choose to go in that direction. I think the distribution of commons and uncommons and rares isn't egregious this time around, with a couple of exceptions. I'm still annoyed by the repeated sculpts of the Draconian minis, as I think that's a missed opportunity. Another good thing about this particular set, though, is that Dragonlance and these minis are generically Dungeons & Dragons enough that you can pretty much use them in whatever standard Sword Coast adventure that you might be running, unlike the Spelljammer set, for example. It's also got some good and unique PC mini sculpts, and some great general use monsters, and some great dragons, and those siege engines. Honestly, there's not really any mini in the set that is just bad. And there are some that are just great, like that Skeletal Knight on the horse. Dragonlance is a very solid adventure, and this is a very solid set of minis that should get you through most of it. There are a host of premium figures that released alongside of it, including Lord Soth and his Greater Death Dragon, and we'll have all those videos and reviews linked down below. If you're running the adventure, let me know how it's going for you. I really want to know. While the story and everything seems really solid, I think I'm personally looking for adventures that are a little bit more off the beaten path. I really like to keep my players on their toes with something a little bit different, so I don't know if I'll ever run Dragonlance, but if you are, tell me about it. I want to hear how it's going. The Dragonlance booster set is available now. A single booster box is around 18 to 20 bucks. It'll contain 1 large and 3 medium or small figures, or 4 medium or small figures. The huge figures come in super boosters, which have 2 huge figures each, which go for about 40 bucks a pop. A brick will get you 6 booster boxes and 1 super booster. That runs about 125 bucks. And a case, which contains 4 bricks and should net you at least one of every figure, is around 465 bucks. And prices will vary, of course, by retailer. Let me know what you think about it all in the comment section down below. And the best way to help us make more content is by supporting our sponsors. Go pick up Drist's Travelogue of Everything Volume 2 using our link below, and check out the animated cards from Hit Point Press. They'll all make fantastic gifts for the DM or the player in your life. We've got quite a few cool things to share with you this month, including the new dinosaur-themed Epic Encounter boxes, 2 D&D board games, including Onslaught, which came out earlier this year and we haven't had time to get to, and the upcoming co-op game Trials of Tempest. And we're not quite done with Dragonlance either, as we'll be going over the premium Dragonlance set from Beetle and Grimm's very soon here. And there's another box from WizKids scheduled for delivery tomorrow as I'm filming this, so be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything, and you can help others find us by clicking that little thumbs up button down below me. You can get a little kobold of your own over at heroplus.com, and you can sign up for our next kobold Kickstarter, which will feature matching dice sets for each kobold, plus new monsters and a brand new kobold using our link in the corner or in the doohickey down below. And you can go and have some fun adventures in the meantime. So until I see you again, stay safe, have fun, love each other, and I'll see you next time at the Gallant Goblin.